hello everybody, how are you? Tonight's learning is generously sponsored by Mario Sapoznik in the merit of the Refuah Shlomo of Menachem Mendel Ben Batya, and by DJ, wait, dude, yes, Ben Sarabatya, and by DJ Acquisitions for the Refuah Shlomo of Menachem Mendel Ben Sarabatya and Tvorah Fega Bat Razel. That's number one. Number two, I do find it especially auspicious that we are finally back here in Miami in the flesh in the 305. What up? It's great to be here after that 2-week hiatus, and thank you for staying with me, even though I wasn't here. But I felt you in my heart and in my mind. One last thing, I know that we've been trying to do a push on this. If you're home and you're watching this from home, then I get that you're embarrassed that you're watching, but please share it anyway. Share it with your friends. Share it everywhere. If you like it and you want to see it, then chances are you know somebody else who would also. And you never know. We might be able to help people just the tiniest bit, and that's always a good thing. So tonight, I was supposed to talk about something totally different. I had no intention about talking about this. We were going to originally call it, man, I don't even remember what we were. Something to the effect of like Tisha B'Av, why are you pretending to mourn anyway? Like, who are you fooling? It was something like that. And then I really have a great debt of gratitude to, first of all, Ariella Balsam, number one, from Israel. She asked me if I was going to mention the metal detectors, and I read it, and I'm like, no. Yeah, why not? Yeah, sure. And then I got really inspired by some things that I was reading, both by Ari Fold, by Sarah Tuttle Singer, by Mendy Pritzker. So all of you guys, big ups. I appreciate it very much. And it's funny, see, none of them are saying this right now anyway, because they're in Israel and they're probably schluffing. So, but thank you. If and when you do see this, I appreciate it. And oh wow, that's odd, but awesome. And that was a heck of a fish you caught today. I'm very proud of you. Well done. L'chaim Mabruk. Yeah. So it is to them that we owe this. I started thinking like in this strange rabbit hole, and I just went down the rabbit hole with metal detectors. So we're going to be talking today about metal detectors and Tisha B'Av. Now, for those of you who don't know why we would be discussing metal detectors, humor me for 180 seconds and I will tell you why. Short time ago, two Israeli Arab terrorists smuggled weapons onto the Temple Mount, and they murdered two Israeli police officers. They killed two police officers. Now, the Israeli government, as you would have expected, went ballistic and overreacted by installing metal detectors. And with the thought process being that if we have metal detectors, then people would not be able to smuggle weapons onto the Temple Mount. Understandably, this severely disproportionate response was met with a lot of worldwide condemnation, and the Palestinian Authority asked their people to riot non-violently. No, that's not what happened. My mistake. They asked them to have a day of rage, and which wasn't inciting violence. It's a linguistic thing. I think it's a linguistic thing. In Arabic, it actually sounds very much like what Mahatma Gandhi was going for. And people, in fact, did respond very violently. And there was a young terrorist who decided it would be a good idea to walk into a Jewish settlement, and there was this wonderful family having a Friday night dinner, and they had just had a baby, it was my understanding, and they were having a Shalom Zachar, which is when you invite the entire community into your home to celebrate the birth of this child. And so when there was a knock at the door, they opened the door thinking that it would be lovely community members, but instead it was a lovely terrorist with a knife that he took from his kitchen, and he proceeded to butcher the family because metal detectors. So after this happened, the world was exerting significant pressure on Israel to, be reasonable and remove the metal detectors, and they did, and eventually they did. So as you would imagine, this set off a firestorm of semi-epic proportions, and there were many of my friends thought that it would be a terrible thing to get rid of the metal detectors. Many of my friends thought it would be a great thing to get rid of the metal detectors, and I would like to go through both sides of that story with you for a couple moments, just to understand, what the different ideas are. So, we'll start on, just pick a side, right? Why not? We'll start like this. The people that said, get rid of the metal detectors, get rid of them, they make perfect sense, you see. They make perfect sense. He said, first of all, why do I even need metal detectors? You have metal detectors at an airport to make sure that no one brings weapons on the airplane. Why would you put metal detectors on the Temple Mount? To know whether or not they're bringing weapons? We know they're bringing weapons. You don't need metal detectors. Furthermore, you're going to start World War III over this. And I'm not talking about, well, you're enabling terrorists. Terrorists aren't the only issue. You understand, we've had a very good peace with Jordan for the better part of 45 years, give or take, right? Better part of 4 decades, we've had a very, very good peace with Jordan. We were this close. We were this close to blowing that up. Well, what would have happened? I don't know. Neither do you. Nobody knows. We had a major diplomatic crisis with them that was averted because of this. I don't know how the entire Arab world would have responded, and nor do you. And there could have been another intifada. Don't run so quickly into the war that you fear is inevitable. As Churchill said, jaw is better than war. And it's hard to argue with Churchill. Therefore, they felt very strongly that they should take away the metal detectors. Now let's talk about the other side. The other side said, let me get this straight. A person murdered a family with a knife because you put metal detectors on a mountain. If you remove the metal detectors from the mountain because he murdered people, then whenever you do anything he doesn't like, his response will be, I am going to murder more people with knives because I know they will give me whatever I want as long as I do that. In fact, every movie from the 1980s knew this, right? We don't negotiate with terrorists. I know now it's a joke. In the 80s, it wasn't a joke. It was like in all the movies, right? Because that was like, life imitates art. So we knew that. For example, say my friends on this side, when Chamberlain, the Prime Minister of Britain, went to meet with Hitler in Munich and did that terrible appeasement deal and came back with the big iconic picture, peace in our time, right? Well, what did Churchill say? Churchill said you had a choice between war and dishonor. You chose dishonor and you'll have war later. And like we said before, it's hard to argue with Churchill. So who's right? I mean, obviously they're both right, but who's right? In good Jewish fashion, I would like to put forth that I think they're both wrong. I think they're both wrong, and I love you guys. You guys, hey, I think they're both wrong, and I'll tell you why. I will tell you why they're both wrong. Because if they were right, I wouldn't have a show. So let's begin talking about Tisha B'Av. Now, what is Tisha B'Av? Tisha B'Av is basically the Jewish 9/11, both in scope.
Greatest charity that's very human.
God, is that you?
By justice, I don't know who deserves it.
No, that can't be God.
Justice by God.
God has a much squeakier voice than that. Right? Or zero for the price of one. This is something I said. Yes, Tisha B'Av. So the words themselves, Tisha B'Av, means the 9th of the month of Av. Like you would say, September 11th, 9/11, it's the 11th day of the 9th month. So too, the 9th day of the month of Av. That is our day of mourning. It's the Jewish national day of mourning, and it's been around for years and years and years. By the way, Yo tengo calor, big time. Is that just me? Dude, I love you. So what happened on this day? Well, historically, there's like a whole slew of terrible, awful, god-awful things that have happened historically in all sorts of places on this day. But the major ones is that both temples were destroyed. The first temple was destroyed in about 580 BCE, before the Common Era. There is some debate about that. We're not going to go into that right now because it doesn't matter. It was a long time ago. Okay, it was give or take almost 3,000 years ago. And then the second temple, that was destroyed by the Babylonians under Nebuchadnezzar, which is the name of the ship in the Matrix. He was also a Babylonian king. And he destroyed the first temple in about 580. And then the second temple was destroyed in the year 70 by the Romans. You've heard of the Romans. Those are the guys with all the beautiful art. So yeah. Now, these were horrific events. These were horrific events. And therefore, in commemoration for the destruction of both of these temples, we mourn. Now, when Jews mourn, they're not the happiest people anyway. Right? So mourning has to really take on like some heavy-duty stuff. So we have what we call the 5 tortures that we do. There's no eating, there's no drinking, there's no marital relations, there's no wearing leather shoes. Leather shoes, like that's real. There's no washing and anointing your body to make yourself, smell good. But that's not enough. That's what we do on Yom Kippur. You'd think Yom Kippur, that's like a pretty high standard. No. We have to go further than that. Do you know what the rabbis did? The rabbis said, you can't sit in a chair on Tisha B'Av. Can't sit in a chair too comfortable. Sit on the floor. Can't say hi to anybody, which is great. I don't want to say hi to anybody either, but can't say hi to anybody. And then you go to synagogue, you go to shul on Tisha B'Av morning, and you have like 3 hours of dirges of keynote. Now I want you to know something. The rabbis sat down and they thought, how could we make the shul experience worse? Sitting on the floor, not good enough. The keynote did it. The dirges are so bad. They're so bad that, believe me, you'll trade 3 days of sitting on the floor for not having to do that. So it's a really, really miserable day. It's a miserable day, right? It's the stuff that everybody hates about religion. It's that kind of a day. It's just irrelevant because well, we'll talk about that in a moment. So we're mourning. We do all these things to mourn because we're very sad that the temple, the Beit HaMikdash, say it however you want, was destroyed. I'm going to say that again. The younger one was destroyed 2,000 years ago. Is that really hurting you? Like, does that hurt you? Are you sad? Are you sad that the Beis HaMikdash? You're not sad. No one you know is sad about the Beis HaMikdash. Maybe like 4-year-olds. They get sad, right? Because they're 4. So you tell them that the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, they start to cry. You also tell them Cinderella died, they start to cry. It's the same thing. So, but adults aren't sad that the temple was destroyed. You don't know anybody who knew anybody who had heard of anybody who knew anybody.
Excuse me, son. Where's Stanton Monsters?
Oh, that's fantastic. It's the one with his face on the door. You guys aren't doing anything, right? Do you happen to know where the better class is? Oh yes, right. It's that room over there. It's the big room with all the cool people in it. Sorry, but couldn't help it. It's amazing. Right? Yeah. No, that's bleach, my friend. That's a whole different thing. That's a whole different thing. I'm sorry, lo siento. Let's go back to where we were. The point is, you're not really actually mourning over the building. You're not. And don't think, if in case you've been thinking you're the only one who wasn't. I know like Orthodox people, okay, because I grew up very Orthodox and I'm still very Orthodox. Frum people aren't mourning over the temple either. They're not. What they're going to tell you is, no, but I'm really sad that I'm not mourning. Like, I'm really sad that I don't get it. We're mourning because we wish we understood what we lost when we had it. We're so sad because we don't even know we had. You can watch, by the way, when you're done with the keynote, they have these shiurim that they televise. Actually, some of them are very, very good. Some of them are good. I think it's called the Heritage Series. And you'll probably hear 5 or 6 speakers tell you why you should be sad that you don't know what you're missing. You get that often. But no one's actually sad. So let's move off of that. Yeah. And more than that, okay? If someone told you that they are very desirous of having a temple, you'd be very sketched out. You would be so sketched out, okay? You could be the biggest Jew in the world, the biggest Rosh Hashiva, beard down to your pupik, massive furry hat. Someone tells you, Rabbi, I can't wait for the temple to be built so I can slaughter animals and throw their blood at the altar. The rabbi's going to call the cops on you because it's weird. So it's a fact. It's a fact. Fine. Let's accept that. So we're pretending to be very sad about something in the hope that if we're very sad about it, God will build it again, which has been very effective. It's been so effective. We've been sad about it for 2,000 years and nothing. So it's clearly not working. Whatever we're doing, it's not working. Maybe we should try something else. I don't know. Why not? So before we decide what it is that we should be trying, let's understand for a moment, let's put into perspective the scope of the tragedy. I don't mean how many Jews died. Okay, many Jews died. That's true. Many Jews died. However, the surprise, the shock value in the destruction of the temple was impossible to comprehend. When the prophets went to the Jews and said to them, God's going to destroy the temple, they laughed at them. And these are people that they believe were prophets. I'm not saying the drunk guy homeless at the golf course who comes over to you and says, the world is ending. It's not ending, dude. You're high. That's not the guy. I'm talking about people that they believed were prophets. We're coming to them and saying, God's going to destroy the temple if you continue acting this way. And it was absurd. No one believed them. Why? Why did no one believe them? Because if I told you that Russia was going to destroy America tomorrow, you wouldn't believe me either. America's been around for fewer than 250 years. Israel had been a commonwealth for 1,000 years. 1,000 years. So do the math. From the time that Joshua entered until the end of the Second Temple with a 70-year hiatus, you're talking about a very well-established, it's like England, right? When did William the Conqueror show up? Like 1040? That's a very established country. If someone tells you that it's just going to cease to exist, you don't buy it. You don't buy it. And furthermore, when you hear nowadays about like invasions, Russia invades Crimea, and that's like the worst thing that could ever happen. When America invades Iraq, they invade with like bags of rice. Like we invade and we give them food and then cable TV. This wasn't that. This wasn't that. This is like they would invade and then slaughter everybody, unless they were raping or sending you to slavery. Those were your three options: death, rape, slavery. Sometimes you got all three. Sometimes all three, and not in the order you think. So it was horrible. It was, you got that, yeah. It was horrible. It was horrible. That's what the Romans were doing. They came in, they killed everybody. They killed everybody. Then, you know what they did? It's amazing when you look at like the epic hatred that they had for the Jews at the time. So all of the roads in the old city of Jerusalem they run east to west because everything was temple-centric. You're all about the temple. The Romans uprooted those roads and ran all the roads north to south. They switched the name of Jerusalem to Aelia Capitolina, and they changed the name of Judea to Philistina. Right? The name Palestine is a Roman name. The Romans, after conquering the Jews and bragging about it on a coin, the Judea Capta coin, which is a beautiful coin. I think Martin Brody has one, by the way. After they did that, to rub salt in the wounds, they changed the name from Judea, which means Yehudah, the tribe, to Philistina, which was an ancestral enemy of the Jews during the time of David. That's where the name comes from, by the way. We'll talk about indigenous peoples maybe some other time. But anyway, but that's not to say that this was like worse than the Holocaust. I mean, the Holocaust definitely killed many more Jews than the destructions of both temples, times two, probably. Maybe not times two, but certainly more than either one of them. I mean, so it's not a tragedy issue. It's not that we're so sad because 2,000 years ago a horrible thing happened, and therefore we're still going to cry about it. Get over it, man. It's been a long time. Get over it. Okay. Now we get to the rabbis. See, rabbis are fun. Because when the rabbis were being dragged out in chains, the ones who were lucky, perhaps, seeing their looted and sacked temple burning down behind them, being dragged off to Rome. If you want to see what that looks like, look at the Arch of Titus. It's still there, right? They shackled the Jews and made them walk right through it. It's still there. You can see the evidence of this. They haven't destroyed that evidence yet. That's okay. When ISIS conquers Rome, they'll probably knock that down too. And as they were doing this, the rabbis were sitting there thinking to themselves, and they write about this in the Talmud. They write about it in the Gemara. They say, why was the land blessed? How could this happen? How? The Romans are stronger than you. What do you mean, how? No, but that's not what the rabbis mean. The rabbis are like, what sin? What sin destroyed the temple? Literally, the thing is burning in the background. And maybe my talus wasn't long enough. Yeah, and they come up with the most original answers. The Jews didn't like each other. That's why God killed all the Jews and threw them out of Israel. Or they didn't make a blessing before they learned Torah, which is, it's understandable. If Jews don't make blessings before they learn Torah, they should definitely be demolished and decimated and destroyed. And when you hear these things, I think that the Western mind generally feels the same way that you and I feel about Jerry Falwell. So, 9/11 happens, and Reverend Falwell, why did this happen? Oh, because the gays, right? Really? I thought because the terror. No, not the terrorists. It's the gays. There's a terrible tsunami in Indonesia, and tens of thousands of people died. Blame the cross-dressers, right? Do you take that guy seriously? If you don't take that guy seriously, why do we take our guy seriously? What's the difference? And just I like my guy better. The people that watch the 700 Club like him. He may have a larger viewership, by the way, than the Talmud readers. In fact, I would bet my bottom dollar that he does. How do you know it's the gays? Maybe Ever think of this? Maybe the tsunami happened because you're a homophobe. Maybe the tsunami was because of the haters of him. You're making it up anyway. So the rabbis are sitting there trying to peg this sin, that sin. It just seems like a very strange, random exercise because it seems like you're asking yourself, what magical amulet didn't work when the Roman ballista started flying over the walls? Which magical amulet? Let's get that one again. Just leaves a lot to be desired for me. I really don't like this.
Self-control.
Well, I feel compelled to finish it because someone gave it. Well, why do I feel compelled to finish it?
Drink that.
See, I like this. They're both poison. This I like. Drink the poison you like.
That's why you say pick your poison.
Right, pick your poison, exactly. When they gave Socrates hemlock, he had a choice, didn't he? So let's talk now for a few moments. Don't worry, we're going to answer all these questions. Worry not, fret not. Let's talk for a moment about what the Gemara says. Because the Talmud relates stories over to us that were happening at the time. And there are two very, very famous stories. One, which is incredibly famous, you've probably all heard of, and another one that's a little bit less known. The Gemara says as follows. The Gemara starts off, Rabbi Yochanan says, Ashrei Adam mefached tamid. Praiseworthy is the man who is always afraid. Praiseworthy is that man who's always afraid. Okay, it's a strange thing to say. You can live in fear. I don't know, that's not what Tony Robbins teaches me, but okay. What do you mean, Rabbi? Well, I'll tell you what I mean. On Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, Jerusalem was destroyed. And on a little fender, Beitar is destroyed. These two massive cities. Well, what do you mean? What's Kamsa and Bar Kamsa? So if you already know the story, humor me. And if you don't know the story, then listen, you're going to like this story. There's this guy. The main character in the story is neither Kamsa or Bar Kamsa. You don't get to meet him. The main character in the story is a guy that I like to call Fred. Now, Fred has a friend named Kamsa, and he's got an enemy named Bar Kamsa. And one day, he's making a party. So he sends an email to Kamsa, and accidentally it goes to Bar Kamsa. Typical case of mistaken identity. And Bar Kamsa opens his computer and he goes into the gym and he's like, ooh, there's a party. Fred's making a party. I want to go. I love parties. I don't even like Fred, but I love parties. And he goes to the party. And Fred shows up at his party and sees the guy that he hates. I don't mean he just hates him a little bit. I mean, like this is like his ex-brother-in-law who's dating his ex-wife, okay? Who just sister's brother dating your ex-wife. I'm sorry, sister's husband. Sister's ex-husband, right? Your brother-in-law, there we go, there's the math. Sorry, I can't help it, whatever. He really hates him, that's the point. The point is he hates him, and he goes to the thing and he sees him, and he's like, what are you doing here? Don't you know I hate you? And the guy's like, what? You invited me. What do you want me to invite? He goes, I never invited you, okay? That was spam. This was not, the Prince of Nigeria invited you. Get out. And he's like, dude, I'm already here. I mean, like, can I just pay for my meal? It was like $50 a head. Here's $50. Let me stay. No, afuera. So he says, well, everyone's seen me here already. I'd be like really embarrassing. I was like saying hi to everybody, like high fives. I wanted to get in the selfies. I heard that Ellen is here with Matt Damon. Like, I can't miss that. So how about I'm gonna pay for half the party? You let me stay, half the party. I'm gonna give you 25 grand. And the guy's like, dude, I hate you. Arroz! And he says, bro, it's humiliating. You're making a scene. I'll pay for the whole party. I'll give you $50,000. Let me stay. God picks him up physically and throws him out the door. Now here's what goes through Bar Kamsa's mind. Bar Kamsa says, well, you know, the rabbis were there at the party. By the way, for all of you, I would like to be invited to more parties, okay? Because yeah. So, the rabbis were there, and they didn't say anything, let it happen. I'm going to go mess with them. What does he do? He goes to Caesar in Rome and says, Caesar, the Jews have rebelled against you. And Caesar says, really? Why should I believe you? He says, well, I'll prove it. If you send them an offering, a sacrificial offering in their temple, you'll notice all the stories about the temple, send them a sacrificial offering in the temple, and you'll see they won't bring it. They won't bring your tribute to honor their God, and that's how you'll know that really they hate you. And the king is like, well, I think you're crazy, but sure, here, take this beautiful prized bull and bring it on the altar. Now, what does he do? He makes a tiny blemish in the eyelid in a place where according to Jews it's a blemish, and according to Romans it's not considered a blemish. And he gets there, and the Jews don't know what to do. And it gets the Supreme Court. Talk about like screwy jurisprudence from 2,000 years ago. It gets the Supreme Court, and they say, hey man, we gotta bring this animal. If we don't sacrifice this animal, we're gonna have problems with El Caesaro. And Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkulis, the head of the Sanhedrin, the head of the Jewish High Court, said, you can't bring that. If you bring that bull, everyone's going to think that a bull that has a blemish is allowed to be sacrificed to God. Can't do that. So one guy in the court goes, okay, no problem. Don't bring the bull. Kill him. Kill the Kamsa guy. Kill him. And then he won't be able to tell Caesar that we didn't do it. And everyone's like, that's a good idea. Let's put an axe in his face. And then Rabbi Zechariah's like, no, because then people will think that if you put a blemish in a sacrifice, you get the death penalty, and that's not true. And the rabbis were like, oh, that's a good point. No, that's a good point. And while they were deliberating for days and days and days, Roman army destroys them. Not exactly the timeline, but you get the point. Therefore, says the Gemara, An vitanuto shel Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkulis, the meekness, the weakness, the wimpiness, pick your word, the meekness of Rabbi Zechariah destroyed our city and burned down our building and exiled us to all the nations. Now, if you read that story, you are siding with people on the latter half of our original analogy, right? We're saying, hey, if you're going to be weak, if you're going to let people walk all over you, if you're not going to take care of business, we're all going to die. It's a good lesson. So the Gemara tells another story, like right after that story. The Gemara says, you know what happened to Beitar? See, it used to be in those days that when a kid was born, they would plant a tree. And then, so a little boy is born, they plant a tree, and a little girl is born, and they plant a tree, and then when they get married, they cut down the trees, and they use it to make their table. You know, now we have wood to make a table. It's beautiful. And one day, these Romans were going by, you know, and these Romans, they take whatever they want, wherever they want, to whomever they want. They do whatever they like, and they have no respect for local customs. And they're 2,000 miles away from home, and they're going through my village. You know what happened? The carriage broke down, like the axle broke. So they needed an axle. So some guy, you know, hopped off the wagon and took an axe and chopped down a tree and used it as an axle. But that was the marriage tree. So the Jews were like, that's an outrage, and they killed them. The lady in the carriage was like the niece of the governor. I mean, it says Caesar's daughter, but it means like she was an important lady. Bam, Roman army. Well, you weren't meek that time, were you? You went pretty hard that time. How'd that work out for you? Same exact piece of Talmud in Gittin. Look it up, 55b. Starts there, goes on a few times. Well, which one is it? So he's telling me, hey man, if you're meek, you're dead, and if you're strong, you're dead. So you're not really helping me very much with your advice, are you? Doesn't seem to me. It's very weird. Very weird. Okay. So we're trying to figure out what the cause of our misery is. Is it over meekness or is it over strength? Don't worry. As always, it's neither. Here's how I know it's neither. The truth is, everything that you've been taught about Tisha B'Av is a lie. Because Tisha B'Av doesn't seem to have anything to do with the temple. It precedes the temple by 400 years. The source of Tisha B'Av, the source of mourning on the 9th day of Av, is biblical. Hundreds of years before the temple. The Jews are in the desert. It's in the portion of Shalach, in the book of Numbers, in the book of Bamidbar. Moses sends spies into the land of Israel, land of Canaan. And the spies go in and they're there for 40 days. And they come back and they go, well, you know, the land is pretty good. Pero, the people that live there, mas grande. yeah, they're huge. There's no way we get it. And by the way, the land isn't even good. The land kills its inhabitants. It's good land, but it's bad land. We can't go in. We're all going to die. And Moses is like, you're right. You're all going to die. You didn't want to go into Israel? You're all dead. 40 years in the desert. 40 years in the desert. Again, because they were meek. right? They're meek. They didn't want to go in. Oh, but the very next day, what do the Jews do? They get up and they say, we're here, Hinenu V'alinu, let's go in. We're not afraid of them, Moses. We're not afraid of those people. Let's go in. Let's take them out. And Moses is like, you can't go in. I already told you. God said, no, you're all going to die in the desert. No, we got this. And Moses is like, that's a really bad idea. It's a really bad idea. We learned this before. You never bet against Moses in a God fight. Ever. He stacks the deck, right? He's like, bad idea. They don't care. This is what we call the Mapilim. The Mapilim are the people that the very next day said, we're not afraid, and they ran into Canaan and they all got slaughtered. So again, it's like the same story all over again. You have the people that are too meek, you have the people that are too strong, and they're in the exact same place. I mean, that's not an accident, right? The fact that the Gemara and the Chumash put them in exactly the same place with both of these sides cannot possibly be accidental or incidental. It has to be pivotal. It's telling you what's happening. It's explaining to you what the issue is. Well, let's try to reverse engineer it a little bit. What is the response, the consequence to all of these sins? Whatever the sins happen to have been, whatever the mistakes were, the consequence is always the same. And the consequence is always what we call galut. Galus, exile. Exile, God says, you can't go into Israel, you're staying in the desert for 40 years. God says, I'm kicking you out of Israel, you're going to Babylonia, 70 years. God says, I'm kicking you out of Judea, you're going to Rome for thousands of years. Exile, 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 every single time. The problem is, with this whole exile thing, is that God is making it more and more, seemingly, more and more hard to get back. He's making it so impossible to ever find our way back, because we don't even remember what things were supposed to be. I mean, at least in the first exile, they were the same people. Like, there were people who were alive who saw the first temple and the second temple. In fact, it tells us that those people were so sad when they saw the second one, because they saw the first one, right? It's like, can you imagine if you're a 49er fan who saw Joe Montana play and then saw Colin Kaepernick play, right? They're not the same 49ers. So the difference in temples was like that too, because like Shlomo's temple, Solomon's temple, that was an impressive building. The second one was like, no. But they saw it, they were there, they remembered. And the ones who didn't, who hadn't seen, their parents had seen. Their parents had seen. I was not in the Holocaust, but I met people who were in the Holocaust. Our grandchildren will have no idea what the Holocaust was. They'll have no idea. Go to Yad Vashem and find. You don't know. You don't know. You don't know what a survivor is, right? A survivor's the guy from the TV show. So we've been gone for so long. How the heck are we ever supposed to make our way back? We just get further and further and further afloat. Like it doesn't seem to be a very good way for God to deal with us if He wants to make things better ever at any point in time. Furthermore, this issue of galut, this issue of exile, seems to revolve around the temple. Why? Why do I say so? Because even if you have the land of Israel and you don't have a temple, you're still considered to be in exile. That's very strange. If exile is a geographical reality, then if you're in Israel, you're not in exile. I thought this was all about the land of Israel. But no, it's not. It seems to be somehow a temple reality. And the question is why that would be, if after all the issue preceded the temple by many, many years. Now, I'll tell you why. People conflate what a temple is with what you do in it. Again, what a temple is and what you do in it. What would the difference be? Well, for example, let's say you have like the White House. Well, what is the White House? Whatever the symbology of the White House is, what do you do in it? Well, every day you have certain ceremonies that you have to go through with the changing. I mean, we're not as nearly as ceremonial as the Brits in Buckingham, but there are, this Marine has to stand outside of this door, and things are cleaned in this order, and we don't take that picture off the wall. That has nothing to do with what the White House is. That's the ceremonies from a couple hundred years. This is how we do what we do. It's how we ceremonialize ourselves. Similarly, the service that you do in the temple is not what the temple is about. What the temple is about, I will tell you what I believe it is. And obviously it's many things, but on a very, very basic level, on the most basic level, the temple is the symbol of Jewish unity and national identity. That's what it is. Jewish unity, national identity. Now, I will show you why I believe this. I'll show you a positive reason and I'll show you a negative reason. A positive reason would be, God tells Moshe to explain to the Jews, when it comes to everyone getting their personal identity, and we've discussed this in this very forum, when it comes to each tribe and each father and each family having their personal identity and their position and their space, what do they all encamp around? What's dead center, right in the middle, right in the nucleus? The temple. The temple. Saviv la mishkan yachanu. You will encamp around the temple. Despite the fact that the whole encampment is an idea of individuality, you have to have a national identity that supersedes. It is the common denominator for everybody and everything here. That is the purpose of the temple. The temple is what keeps you together. I'll give you another example on the positive end. When the Jews who decided not to go into the land of Israel, the tribe of Reuven, Gad, and half of Manasseh, they were on the other side of the Jordan River. They set up an altar. The next day, the rest of the Jews showed up for war. Said, what are you doing? You can't build your own altar. And they said, well, we have to have an altar because we were afraid you'd forget about us. And they ended up reconciling, saying, no, there's only one altar and it's in Jerusalem, but we won't forget about you. But you see, they said, what makes us together is the altar. It's the temple. This is what makes us together. I'll give you one on the negative end. The kingdom of Israel split in the third king of David. It was David, Solomon, Rehoboam. In the time of Rehoboam, the kingdom split. 10 tribes went north. The guy in charge was a guy by the name of Jeroboam. Jeroboam had a problem. What was Jeroboam's problem? He was, I'm not going to be able to keep these 10 tribes with me. They're all going to go to the temple. I'm going to make my own. And he sets up golden calves. He understands that politics aside, politics are irrelevant. You could be a Democrat, a Republican, a Libertarian, or an anarchist. We're all Jews. We're all going to the temple. I better make a new temple because I can't have them going there. If they're going there, they're going to stay together, and I don't want them together. The temple is the symbol of national unity. It's your identity. It's what you are. It's who you are as Jews. Well, if that's the case, then if Jews are not unified, if they have no national identity, then you know what the temple is? A building. That's it. Sticks and stones. That's all it is. It's a symbol. If the symbol breaks down, what are you left with? A very pretty building. You're left with this guy, pay $13 and watch the gardens. I mean, it's nice. So what happens? How does God rectify that? This is something that I've understood from my uncle. I could be totally wrong. He may not have intended this at all. He's a lot deeper than I will ever be, but this is what I understood from him. Exile is not a punishment. Exile is quite literally the road to redemption. Exile is the method of redemption. It is the continuum upon which you attain redemption. Now I'll show you why I think this is true semantically. The word for exile in Hebrew, as mentioned before, is galut. The word for redemption in Hebrew is geulah. You'll notice that they both share a 2-letter root, which is gal. Gal means a wave. A wheel in Hebrew is a gal, wave. Why? Because galut and geulah are 2 sides of a coin. They're waves. One is up and one is down. One is up and one is down. The road to redemption is through exile. Why is that true? Very simple. Very simple. Because if you're all living in one place and you've lost your identity, how are you going to find it again? I'm going to shatter you and I'm going to throw you everywhere. And now find your identity. So imagine, in order for us to put this back together, we have to have an Egyptian Jew, and a Persian Jew, and a French Jew, and a Spanish Jew, and an Italian Jew, and an American Jew, and a Canadian Jew, well, I don't know about that, and a Russian Jew, and a Polish Jew, and a German Jew. We have to have all of them agreeing on what makes them Jew. It can't be what makes you American, and it can't be what makes you French or Italian or Persian or Roman or Russian. It has to be what makes you Jew. And you're going to learn that by being separated among other people, to see the difference between you and your host nations. It's the direction to redemption. And there's 2 ways that it ends. Either you learn to identify what makes you who you are within the greater society that you find yourself, or you melt into that society and you assimilate and you become part of this society, one or the other. I read this article today. It's very interesting. It was an article about a woman who did not want to, she didn't want to circumcise her son. So instead, she said, I'm going to have my own ritual with a golden cup and a pomegranate. I didn't make that up. I wouldn't have made up the pomegranate. I probably would have said something about a golden cup. But true story. So you read this, and like people are determining, well, how Jewish is she really? Is she very Jewish or a little Jewish? And don't you understand it's such a silly point? It doesn't matter how Jewish she is. That's just a matter of time. If you stop circumcising your kid and you start cutting pomegranates, one thing I can tell you, I don't know how Jewish you are, but I know how Jewish your grandchild will be. Because pomegranates aren't always in season. So either you retain your identity or you disappear. One or the other, and the choice is yours. And you know what? It's incredibly painful. It's incredibly painful because you might notice that the Iraqi Jew thinks his Judaism is better than the Taiwanese Jew. And the Taiwanese Jew thinks it's better than the Venezuelan Jew, who thinks it's better than the Peruvian Jew, who thinks it's better than the Syrian. You get what I'm saying here, right? It's a really painful process. It's a really painful process. And the only way to do it is for us all. What's the language again? Oh, right, I remember. I will bring you from the four corners of the world on the wings of eagles. I mean, what does that sound like to you? What does that sound like to you? El Al, only much friendlier. That would be a miracle, by the way. When the Jews, so again, let's take this now and go all the way back to the beginning. We said, well, it starts with the spies. That's when it started, right? It did. It's the truth. It started with the spies. It starts with the spies. The spies didn't want to go into Israel. Why not? Funny, unclear why not. Oh, because they were afraid. Yeah, there was some fear there. You know what else is? They start slandering the land too. All sorts of reasons apparently why they don't want to go in. Doesn't matter why. You know why? It's funny, if you look in all of the commentaries, the Rishonim, the medieval commentaries from those, they all have this different theory as to like why. Why doesn't the Torah just tell you why? I'll tell you why it doesn't tell you why. Because it doesn't matter why. It doesn't matter why. Sometimes you don't want to go in because you know what? The people who are living there are too strong. Sometimes you don't want to go in there because you know what? I don't think we're going to have a good life there. And it's going to be very hard to make a commonwealth. We're going to have to dig ditches and build roads and drain swamps and put up lighthouses. We're going to have to do all those things. I don't want to do that. I want to stay in the desert. Doesn't matter why. Doesn't matter why. Who cares? You don't want to make a commonwealth? Fine. Have exile. Die in the desert. Then you have the other people. Oh, we'll go in. We're strong. Oh, you're going to take it over because you're stronger? You think stronger is the issue? What, you don't think Israel can blow up the mosque? Stronger is the issue? You're going to die just as easily that way. It's not about strength. It's about why. It's about why. Why do we want to be here? What do we want to build? What do we agree? The spies and the Mapilim, the spies and the ones who wanted to go in, they're the same issue. Two sides of it. It can manifest this way, it can manifest that way. It doesn't matter. The rabbis sit there thinking, how could this have happened? How could this have happened? What sin was it? They weren't talking about magical amulets in Harry Potterville. They were saying that the Torah is there to teach you how to live. And every mitzvah in the Torah is supposed to inculcate and inundate you with values. And if we were doing it perfectly, we would not have made a mistake. I understand that sometimes you're supposed to be meek and strength is a mistake. I understand sometimes you're supposed to be strong and meekness is a mistake. But guess what? They could both be errors, as we've seen. How do you make the right decision? Well, presumably, in the rabbi's mind, if you do the Torah perfectly and you understand how you're supposed to live, you won't make mistakes. So if we are dead, destroyed by the Roman army, how did it happen? What did we lose? What lesson didn't we learn? What were we doing that we shouldn't have been? Or what were we not doing that we should have been doing? It's not about, oh, that's this sin or that sin. What did I not learn? What did I miss? How did the Sanhedrin fumble the ball so badly? How did it happen? How did this whole thing just fall apart from the inside? What lessons aren't we learning? We're not looking at Levitical magical law. That's the idea. Oh, Beth is asking, are we waiting for all the Jews to agree? Yeah, in a moment. We'll see. Let's take it back to the very, very beginning when we said, why are you sitting there pretending to mourn over a building? You're doing all these things. You're not mourning because you missed the temple. You're mourning because you're hungry. You're upset because you're thirsty. You're angry because you're uncomfortable. Well, obviously, if the rabbi said do all these things, it's because they want to force you into a position of uncomfortable. They know you don't miss the temple. They're not fools. They say, dude, how do you think a guy's going to miss the temple? He's never seen it. Let's make him uncomfortable. Why? Because I want him to think about something. What is it that I want him to think about? Interesting. Why aren't we together? I'll tell you why. Very simple. Because we have no idea what Jewish identity means. We don't know. We may know like little bits and pieces, but we don't know. We don't know. How am I so sure that we don't know? Because you can't agree on it. If you can't convince the Jew next door in Ramat Beit Shemesh of Jewish identity, you think that you're going to convince the world that you have the moral high ground to take that mountain? You're sitting in the same shul, in the same row, and you don't have the same identity. Get your house in order, boy. It's not about metal detectors. Doesn't matter. Yes, metal detectors, no metal detectors, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter, not the issue. Not the issue. The issue is why are we here? The people that say, let's take the Temple Mount right now. Okay, great. What are you going to do with it? Let's build the temple. It's funny, there are people that want to build a temple. They want to build a temple. You know why I find it funny? Do you honestly think if you put up a very beautiful building like they have in Bells and Kiryat Bells, you put up a beautiful building, you think magical fire is going to start raining down? You think that that's going to fix the world, your pretty building? Or do you think we have some, real pervasive problems that can't be fixed by gold and concrete? You haven't decided what we are. Let the Iraqi Jew and the Egyptian Jew and the Orthodox Jew and the Reformed Jew and the Israeli Jew, let them get in a room and decide. When they have one identity, when they can all say that what makes me unique does not in any way, shape, or form take away from your Jewish identity because we're all living around the same idea, that's when you get your temple. That's when you get it. Because it's never been about the building. The building is irrelevant. So the redemption will come, God willing, speedily in our days, if we actually would spend some time to figure out the problem.
What do you mean by identity?
What
do you mean when you say identity?
I'll give you an example. Recently, the Prime Minister of Canada was saying that Canadians have no national identity. We're just Canada. If you have no national identity, then you aren't just Canada. You're a bunch of people that happen to live in the same place for now, and you can have a coup d'etat. A national identity means what do you stand for, what makes you you. The American national identity would be found in the Declaration of Independence and a little bit also in the Constitution. Our lawyer friends can help over here. But we consider these truths to be self-evident. America is founded on these principles. These principles are what makes us American. Now, you don't have to be a football fan to be American. You're wrong if you're not, but you don't have to be. You don't have to like cheeseburgers to be American. You probably do when you're overweight, but you don't have to be. You don't have to be. But in order to be American, you do have to believe in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. If you don't believe in self-determination, if you don't believe in capitalism, if you don't believe in these things, then I would make a very strong case. You, sir, are not an American. I mean, you could be legally American, but that's not what America is. Judaism also has a national identity. What are Jews? If we can't articulate that to ourselves, to each other, to our children, if we can't convince the guy next door what it means to be a Jew, then we don't know. We don't know. I mean, it means lots of things. Many things to different people. Okay, there's a synonym for that. It means nothing. Meaningless. So instead of sitting around mourning the temple, sit around and decide, what does it mean to be a Jew and to have a nation of Jews? What does it look like? How do we act? How do we conduct ourselves? What do we busy ourselves with? Mourn over that. It's not about crying. It's about a recognition that if you're way too happy here in America, if you're too happy, this is where you'll end up too. If you're too happy in the desert, you're too happy in Egypt, you're too happy in Babylonia, no problem. No problem. That option's on the table. That option's on the table. So once again, galut, exile. Exile is not a punishment. Exile is a gift. Exile is a gift so that you can learn from the people that surround you, and you can see the difference and understand what it is that beneath everything you are. And I hope that we have a very, very meaningful Tisha B'Av, and hopefully it's the last one of the unhappy ones. Oh, and happy birthday, Mom. Peace and love.